Wednesday, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. We got to get started straight away. Went a little bit behind. Everybody enjoy their day yesterday? Lynette, shalom, shalom. Anita, grand rising. Mom, shalom, shalom. Tikva, grand rising. I'm glad to hear your mom doing better, Tikva. Elijah, shalom, shalom. Kendrick, shalom. Facebook, shalom, shalom. All right, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. It is October the 26th, 2022. Day 246 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. Another 4-year consecutive day count. Day 1265. We are still reading the appendix of Oahspe, which is entitled Book of Knowledge. This was a original book that was in, that should have been in the first printing. Well, it was in the first printing wasn't actually printed and released to the public, right? But in the second printing, this should have been in there, right? So some things that was in the first wasn't the whole thing. Some things was added. Y'all get it, right? The Book of Knowledge, page 755, and we picking back up on chapter 4, chapter IV and Roman numerals. Hannah, shalom, shalom. Elijah, drive safely on your way to work. Jamia, shalom, sis. Nene, shalom, sis, shalom. Father, we thank you that you are an eloquent speaker, not only to man, but to the spirit of man. All right, y'all. Let's get started. Chapter 4, chapter IV, page 755. TAE said, "Now will I apply myself to thy works, O Jehovah. Thine is a book that never errs. The times thou bestoweth shall be my signpost. Is not this the most exalted science under the sun?" Thereupon TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quickened him to remember all the knowledge that had come into the world from the revelations of that day. The typo, it says form. Into the world form. Typo. The R and the O was switched around. I'll read the verse again. Thereupon TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quickened him to remember all the knowledge that had come into the world from the revelations of that day. When TAE had completed his labors, he made a tablet of events and classified them, and he called the tablet Oahspe Bagala. Oahspe Bagala. I think I said that right, maybe. When TAE had completed his labors, he made a tablet of events and classified them, and he called the tablet Oahspe Bagala, because it was of the line of the tree of Jehovah, being the last of the fruits of the Hebrew language. But the people called it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics of both good and evil. Okay. So after Oahspe Bagala is reference letter A. So let's go to the end of the appendix for A. And it's on page 764, and it says see plate 58, Oahspe Bagala. Let's go to the table of contents and find plate 58. Page 511. I remember seeing this. Okay. Yeah, so it's on page, it starts on page 511 and it goes to page 512. Yeah, we read through this, right? Okay, so I'm gonna show you this picture. This right here. And it gives, they showed you, I remember, they told you how to read this. And it goes from like the bottom upward through the, if I want to say it correctly, yeah, it goes through the cycles of man. Yeah, it starts at the bottom. And when there's a, the right side is giving you, don't quote me, I forgot, I got to go back and read it, but that's the tablet. This whole preceding chapter, you would have to read this chapter. Let's see. In Oahspe, the student will draw a line representing the travel of the great serpent for 3,000 years. This shall be cut across in 8 places to represent the periods of light. Okay, yeah. So it starts at verse 17. Let me just read it. In Oahspe, and I'm probably saying that wrong. If I am, forgive me. Shebrew, hey girl, hey. Subtle part, shalom, key, shalom, shalom. Listen, and we're on page 510, verse 17. In Oahspe, the student will draw a curved line representing the travel of the great serpent for 3,000 years. This shall be cut across in 8 places to represent the periods of light. The places between them shall be made dark and light according to the history of man's behavior during said 3,000 years. War shall be represented by black. The duration of wars shall be marked with a cut called change. Numbers shall designate the degrees of historical manifestations. For every great division of the earth, make one Oahspe. The scale should be from 1 to 1,000 for the entire length, and from 1 to 1,000 from one dawn to another, and from 1 to 1,000 for each and every characteristic designated. Number man 1 and 33, and the moon 1 and 18, and number the earth 1 and 365. These were called by the ancients the grades of 1,000. Sowincity. These were called by the ancients the grades of 1,000, Sowincity. These periods will be found to come under certain numbers: 11, 33, 99, 100, 200, 400, 200, 100, 200, 400, 666, 333, 66, 18, 500, 600, 365, 99, 33, 18, and so on. Not that the numbers as such have anything to do with such matters. Thus the moon's time is 18, the earth's 365, a generation 33, Dan 200, 400, 600, 500, nitrogen or darkness 66 and 666, and so on, for which reason the following tables of times and measurements were established. And then it goes into the plate, and you see all those numbers that it mentioned with the addition of other numbers that like 44 and 444 and 36, the ones that it didn't list. So I would say, like, I got to read through this a few times. I would say read the whole chapter 7. I would say read the whole chapter 7. I probably should have just read the whole chapter. Let me just read the whole chapter. I'm going to read it. Actually, I read the last 2 verses. That was 17 and 18. So let me just read the first 16 verses of this. Make it just a little bit clearer. All right. Tabitha, shalom, shalom. All right. Page 509. I should have just started at the beginning. Okay. And this is explaining this table of Oahspe. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. Page 509, chapter 7, or chapter VII. Having shown the impossibility of philosophy we're in the book of cosmogony and prophecy. So if you haven't read this entire book or you missed it, this is an excellent book. It gives a really good understanding into prophecy, how prophecy works, and being able to prophesy correctly. And in order to prophesy downhill correctly, not just telling somebody they about to receive a new house and a new car. That's a bunch of garbage, right? That ain't prophecy. That's not what this is talking about. It's talking about true prophecy, being able to tell the time cycles of man, what is to come, and being able to look in the past to see what was and decipher based on what was, what shall be, and what will be, right? Like clockwork every single time. Having shown the impossibility, and that not only refers to nature around us and what's going to happen in nations and with men, but also even down to the individual. But those who prophesy never really pinpoint out man because you're grouped together as a whole. You can, right? But you shouldn't, because that gets you off into the shenaniganizing side of things, which is what we see a lot of going ons down here, right? Having shown the impossibility of philosophy based on corporal knowledge to demonstrate truth in regard to unseen things and in regard to planets distant from the earth, it becometh a part of these revelations to put the student in the way to learn from the unseen forces which govern all corporal things, man included, as a general and important part. When a heavy stone falleth on a man, and holdeth him down, it is sufficient to say, the stone ruleth over the man. If an epidemic come upon a city because of uncleanliness, it is well to consider that cause also. Nevertheless, if an epidemic be periodical to a certain city, even when not unclean, it is wise to prophesy an unseen cause. The same rule applieth comparing one locality with another. In certain regions of the earth, certain diseases are common. In certain times of the earth, as to cycles of 3,000 years, certain diseases were common. In certain places of the earth, man hath at times, thousands of years ago, attained to great knowledge and virtue, but his whole country in after centuries became a wilderness. It is not the place of a prophet to answer these things by accusation of ignorance or war. The prophet must account for that tendency in man to fall into ignorance and into war. In other words, he must find the cause of causes. At certain periods of time, for hundreds of years, nations have dwelt in peace and have risen in virtue, then turned to war within themselves and gone down in death. The prophets of old divided time into cycles of 3,000 years with slight variations, and they found that at such periods of time, some certain impulse came upon the people, causing them to try to be better and wiser, even as the same feeling is this day manifesting itself in many nations. The scale then riseth for 400 years, more or less, and after that, wars and epidemics come upon the people. They began then to decline, especially in virtue and peace, but the general intelligence suffereth little for about another 600 or 700 years, after which time they destroy their libraries and records and reduce themselves to ignorance and vice. Then followeth a darkness of 1,000 or more years with slight intermissions. In other 600 years, the corporal senses or intellect began to ascend. Self-conceit cometh upon them. They think that they are the beginning of wisdom on earth. Then cometh another cycle of light. Angels descend from the unseen worlds. New revelations crop out in every quarter. Inspiration cometh upon mortals, and they go to the opposite extreme, superstition and obedience to unseen influences. Such then is the general character and behavior of man during a cycle. And he riseth and falleth in all these particulars as regularly as the tides of the ocean. that man may begin to comprehend these things and learn to classify them so as to rise in wisdom and virtue and thus overcome these epidemic seasons of cycles, these revelations are chiefly made. As previously shown, there are positive and negative forces forever going to and escaping from the earth. Without these, no creature could live on the earth. The negative imparteth to man his corporal growth and corporal desires, passions, and so on, according to the corporal solutions in the firmament and their precipitations to the earth. As to quantity and quality, so will man be affected and inclined to manifest. These influences are easily discernible by some persons. One is depressed by a dull day, another inclined to drunkenness and fighting. By a bright day, man is inspired to energy. A Suis is so susceptible to vortexian currents. He can realize the quality. Hold on, I'll slow down, getting tongue tied. Verse 12, we're on page 510. A Suis is so susceptible to vortexian currents, he can realize the qualities of a medicine while it is yet in a glass bottle by merely holding it in his hand, or know the character of the writer of a letter by holding the letter in his hand. Yet all this is accomplished by the vortexian current of the article in question, right? So, or we would say today, instead of I feel the vortexian current coming off of this, I feel this, the energy that this was written in, you know, this is what it's talking about. You can feel that from medicine. You can feel that when you walk into a room. If you're really sharp, you can really read the character of a person before they open their mouth. Most people can't do it until the person gets to talking for about the first 5 minutes, right? Let me read verse 12 again. A Suis is so susceptible to vortexian currents, he can realize the qualities of a medicine whilst it is yet in a glass bottle by merely holding it in his hand, or know the character of the writer of a letter by holding the letter in his hand. Yet all this is accomplished by the vortexian current of the article in question. These revelations, however, are not in reference to individuals, but to nations and peoples in periods of time embracing hundreds of years and thousands of years. It is an error to say that whilst the corporal worlds are organized with fixed orbits and uses, the unseen worlds are nothing, or at best not organized. They are organized with orbits, places, forms, figures, and so on, as definitely as the corporal worlds are. Their times and seasons are regular and well provided. In the passage of the earth in its own roadway, it goeth amongst these ethereal and atmospheric worlds regularly, so that the periods of inspiration and periods of darkness are not haphazard. It is not one purpose of these revelations to work out prophecies, leaving nothing for man to do, but to call his attention to the unseen forces that rule on the earth and show him the way to make the prophecies himself. Let me read that again. Verse 15. And I'm going to read through 17 and 18 again. Verse 15. In the passage of the earth in its own roadway, it goeth amongst these ethereal and atmospheric worlds regularly, so that the periods of inspiration and periods of darkness are not haphazard. It is not the purpose of these revelations to work out prophecies, leaving nothing for man to do, but to call his attention to the unseen forces that rule on the earth and show him the way to make the prophecies himself. In Oahspe, Bagala, the student will draw a curved line representing the travel of the great serpent for 3,000 years. This shall be cut across in 8 places to represent the periods of light. And so that's what this is, okay? I'll show you this again. This, if you got the page, I know this is really tiny and you can't see it. But if you have this, you can kind of like get close up on it and read through it. And on each side is telling you what's happening during this period of time, along like with the number that it's assigned to it. But pause right here. This shall be cut across in 8 places to represent the periods of light, because there's a letter reference, H. So we'll go to the end of this book of cosmogony and prophecy, and on page 515, the letter H says, let me read this again. In Araknabagala, the student will draw a curved line representing the travel of the great serpent for 3,000 years. This shall be cut across in 8 places to represent the periods of light. Now go to the reference. H says, this would imply that for a Dan of 3,000 years, each period of light would occur at approximately every 375 years, which would be periods of sub-cycle Dan on average. The actual span of a sub-cycle Dan, however, does vary. See Dan in the glossary. Okay, so let's go to the glossary real quick to remind us what a Dan is. Prince, shalom, shalom. Okay, page 773. Bronze Yogi. What's up, brother? Page 773. Dan. A time when a solar system travels through a region of relatively intense spiritual light, which is an area where eth predominates, lacking corporal content in solution. Its effects last for the period of time it takes the solar system to pass through it. See Book of Thor, chapter 6, verse 11. We're going to come back here. Let's go to this real quick. The Book of Thor. Hold on. Go back to the beginning. We're going through the references like I would do, y'all, if I was by myself doing this. So every time they give us a reference, we go to the reference, then we come back and finish. Book of Thor. I got to be overlooking this. I'm going too fast. Book of Apollo. Oh, page 110. I was overlooking it. Okay. All right, 110. Chapter 6 or chapter VI. Thor is the book at the top. Okay. Chapter 6, verse 11. Chapter 6, verse 11 is page 121. I have prepared places of darkness in the ethereal firmament and places of light, and my corporal worlds must travel through them, for so I created them. And these places of darkness and places of light are as changes of seasons for my harvest. Okay, so go back. Page 773. Let me read it, start again at the top. For Dan. A Dan is a time when a solar system travels through a region of relatively intense spiritual light, which is an area where eth predominates, lacking corporal content in solution. Its effects last for the period of time it takes the solar system to pass through it. See Book of Thor, chapter 6, verse 11. A dawn of Dan describes the initial burst of light that accompanies the arrival of a new arc, marking the beginning of an approximately 3,000-year Dan Ha. It is preceded by spirit manifestations and by signs and wonders. Dan is synonymous with Dang, D-A-N-G. See Book of Safa. Within a Dan Ha, the intensity of light varies, being strongest at the dawn of Dan, with incremental sub-cycle dans of lesser intensity that usually fall in some variation of 200, 400, 500, 600, and 1,000 year intervals. And in the book of Safa, there is a whole, and I'll give you the page so you can see. Yeah, well, it's called Hai Dang on page 556. So make a note of that, 556. But that's like a whole chapter too. And we're still looking at some stuff. Okay, so let's go back to where we were at. Page 755. Chapter 4 in the Book of Knowledge, the appendix in the back. Derisiam, shalom, shalom. All right. Thank you, Imam. All right, so we're back on page 755, chapter 4. So let's just start it over since our reference was in verse 2, Arak Nabagala, and it led us to all the different references. So let's just start the whole chapter over, which is where we started this morning, when we started at the beginning. TAE said, "Now will I apply myself to thy works, O Jehovah. Thine is a book that never errs. The times thou bestoweth shall be my signpost. Is not this the most exalted science under the sun?" Thereupon TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quickened him to remember all the knowledge that had come into the world from the revelations of that day. When TAE had completed his labors, he made a tablet of events and classified them, and he called the tablet Arak Nabagala, because it was of the line of the tree of Jehovah, being the last of the fruits of the Hebrew language. But the people called it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics of both good and evil. And you can see that when you look at the tablet of Arak Nabagala, most of the things that happen, all of the dark stuff, you will see to the right of that timeline in that plate, and the good stuff like faith and all of that, the elevation of man, you will see those ebb and flows, right? And all of the good stuff is on the left side, but you also see the war periods of man as well, right? So I hope that brings a little bit more clarity to what he's talking about and what he did. And imagine if you can understand that and know how to do that yourself, right? And as he was writing it, unseen forces, it said the sons and daughters of the Creator, right? Thereupon TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quickened him to remember, right? So I'm sure that was not the sons and daughters that was in the flesh, but those who had already been born into the spirit realm, and it's those ones who's constantly helping to raise man up higher, right? It was them that was helping him to remember everything and recounting to him all the histories, like what happened here, right? Because this was designed to help man recount the history from at least 24, let me not quote that, if I remember correctly, like 25,000 years before it was printed, to kind of help us see where we're at now, where man is going, right? Okay. Verse 2, thereupon TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quickened him to remember all the knowledge that had come into the world from the revelations of that day. When TAE had completed his labors, he made a tablet of events and classified them, and he called the tablet Arak Nabagala, because it was of the tree of Jehovah, being the last of the fruits of the Hebrew language. But the people called it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics of both good and evil. Verse 3, and TAE divided the time of the tablet according to the darkness and the light of the period, and for 400 years prior, and it was in all 3,400 years. TAE said, according to the light of my Father in heaven, will I call the ends of the tablet Dan Ha. For these are the quickened times mentioned by the prophets of old. Not only will I prove them whether they are true or not, but I will find the motion of the great serpent, and this will determine the orbit thereof. For since Jehovah hath made years, hath he not also made cycles? And will not cycles comport with the rules of members? Thus did TAE determine that an ark was 3,000 years, but that the Dans varied from 50 to 600 years. TAE said, though thou, O Jehovah, hath made thy arks 3,000 years, thou hast wisely varied the heights thereof. Now will I compute the events within the cycle of bond and find the members born into atmosphere and the times of their abiding lights. And TAE perceived that he could determine the dominions of the lower heaven, and from this revert to the earth and discover what had been in ages past. Thereupon TAE classified cycles at 3,000 years, and the wave of the great serpent at 200 years and 400 years. These again he subdivided, and he found that every 33rd year was alike on the earth in heat and cold, and he discovered from these the nebulous regions within the vortex of the earth and the cause of the variations and the times of the falling meteors. Again, TAE subdivided the 33rd year into 11, and he found the variation 1 in 99 years. And TAE subdivided the 33rd year into 11, and he found the variation 1 in 99 years. Then sorrow came upon his soul, and he cried out unto the Father. TAE said, O Jehovah, wherein have I done wrongfully? In all my computations I was puffed up with promise, surety, but in my farthest research I am tripped up. The power betwixt the sun and the earth could not make this defect. Jehovah heard the voice of TAE and answered him through his son Korpor. Korpor said, why repinest thou, O TAE? Thou hast taken for granted a power existed betwixt the sun and the earth, because forsooth philosophers have taught it. Did not the philosophers of old say the sun was the creator? TAE then cast aside the philosophy of this day, prove the attraction of the corporal worlds do not exceed 7 diameters, each of its own, but many of them less than 2. And he measured the satellites and their distances from their central corpor, and he perceived the diameters of the vortices could be determined by the loss or gain in the velocity of the satellites. And I believe we're going to read it. I'm thinking directly after we read Susan B. Martinez's Field Guide to the Spirit World. We're going to get into that science book that she got. And this will help us with some of this a lot, right? Because she's been studying this for a long time. We the newcomers to the party, right? But in this, I'm going to show it to you. Just in case y'all don't have it, it's going to be a while before we get to it. And this is going to help some things we can't figure out because we're given the wrong information here, right? In regards to science and some things and what things are and what things are really not, right? And this right here, delusions and science and spirituality, the fall of the standard model and rise of knowledge from the unseen worlds. This will be a great deal of help for us as we're really looking at the worlds, how the Father truly created them, right? The misinterpretations of things simply by observation and looking and testing some things that we have within our reach to do today, right? Matter of fact, I think I read you the back of this before. Let me read it to you again. Let me keep my place, right? Just so you can kind of look forward to it if you want to get it ahead of time. Some of you probably already got it, right? Listen. Matter of fact, let me read you these two. Everybody leave like little comments. I'm going to read these and then I'm going to read the back of this. Martinez methodically and masterfully presents her thesis that almost everything we have been taught about our species, evolution, our planet, and our cosmic origins is totally wrong. This is a must-have book for anyone who wonders about our true history on this planet. We highly recommend it. Brad and Sherry Steiger, authors of Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings. And the second comment, scholars and other readers thirsty for a new multidimensional cosmology will react to Martinez's work as a parched straggler seeing an oasis. And that comment was by Paul Von Ward, author of We've Never Been Alone and The Soul Genome. And so here's a quick overview of what's in here. What if science and society's most darling theories taught as fact were 100% wrong? What if the anomalies that disprove these theories were covered up and distorted, and any serious challenges brushed off as lunacy, hysteria, junk science, and dissension? In this primer in deprogramming, Susan B. Martinez reveals the disinformation at the root of mainstream consensus thinking. She punches gaping holes in the cherished theories of the Big Bang, Darwinian evolution, ice ages, and global warming. And we got a little taste of that when she was live on Cosmo Cow's interview, right? And it was talking about global warming a little bit, right? There is no such thing. You just don't understand the cycles of this earth and man and what it does and the ebb and flows, right? And most of us are none the wiser because we don't know either. They walk around with these glasses and these jackets and nice suits, and they talk eloquently, and they send us up the river without a paddle. She punches gaping holes in the cherished theories of the Big Bang, Darwinian evolution, ice ages, and global warming, drawing on the ancient science of the unseen and revelations from the Oahspe Bible, as well as some of the most advanced thinkers in astrophysics. She explains a new theory of everything. She got a new big toe. Y'all catch that for everybody that was here doing my big toe? Remember, toe was an acronym for a theory of everything, my big toe, or my big theory of everything, and your big toe constantly grow. Y'all get it if y'all was here. She used the acronym, but she spelled it out. Okay. I just got a little excited. She might have known they got a book. I don't know. Maybe not. Drawing on the ancient science of some of the unseen and revelations from the Oahspe Bible, as well as some of the most advanced thinkers in astrophysics, she explains a new theory of everything. And she got the quotes. They got the quotes around theory of everything. TOE, theory of everything. Y'all get it. She explains a new theory of everything to replace the standard model. She explores the concept of vortexia, the cosmic whirlwind of our own geomagnetic field, which explains quite simply the subtle changes that take place on Earth and in the universe over time without the magical thinking of the Big Bang, global warming, or ice ages. Martinez reveals how the instability of society itself has found its way into our theories, positing explosive change and acceleration where there is none. She explains how Homo sapiens evolution did not suddenly accelerate 40,000 years ago, and culture did not accelerate birth civilization a mere 6,000 years ago. She shows how these theories of the Freudian and Jungian, Jungian. She shows how the theories of the Freudian and Jungian, I'm sorry, I screwed it up, y'all. I spelled it. She shows how the theories of the Freudian and Jungian unconscious and of reincarnation have grossly misrepresented the spirit of man and the psyche of humanity, resurrecting the majestic order that was once recognized at the basis of reality. Martinez shows that the shift from the age of disinformation to the age of understanding is well underway. And it gives a quick little infomercial about her. Susan B. Martinez, PhD, is a writer, linguist, teacher, paranormal researcher, and recognized authority on the Oahspe Bible with a doctorate in anthropology from Columbia University. The author of several books, including Time of the Quickening and The Mysterious Origins of Hybrid Man. She lives in Clayton, Georgia. And I have both of those books. We actually showed them. Matter of fact, when her whole library came, I was super excited and I showed all the books to you, with the exception of a couple that I was still waiting on. All right, you can get them all from Amazon. The only one, like I said, the only one as of today that's on Audible that you can actually listen to is the one we're about to start reading. I want to say Friday when we start Oahspe over, which is this one. Let me show it to you again. Feel God to the Spirit World. I done already read through it twice or listened to it via Audible twice, you know. All right, so this. And I'll share the links just in case y'all want to read along. I ain't saying you got to get it, but if you want to have it, I give you the same link where I purchased mine from. I do not get paid from any books, anything that I recommend. I just share with y'all my references, and most of my references I order through Amazon, right? All right. So let's go back to page 755. Kevin, shalom, brother. Listen, let me go back to verse. I just started 12. No, 11. We stopped after we read 12, but go back to 10. I think 10 will keep all of this in its proper context based on why I just read the back of this, right? Okay. TAE said, verse 10, page 755. TAE said, O Jehovah, wherein have I done wrongfully? In all my computations I was puffed up with promised surety, but in my farthest research I am tripped up. So based on the information they was putting out that day, right, with their current day scientists and what they have in the compilations, this is how you do this. As he began to learn how to do cosmogony and prophecy and calculate things the right way, to see the truth of things, the theories that man had given him amounted to nothing. He kept running to a dead end, and he understood that there is no dead end with the Creator, right? He says, so I came into this all proud, like I knew everything, but I'm getting tripped up in my computations. What has happened, right? Listen, and this, I think this book, The Delusions in Science and Spirituality, helps bring a lot of light, especially pointing out all the computations that they give us this day, right? Look. TAE said, O Jehovah, wherein have... Siri, I'm not talking to you. Be quiet. TAE said, O Jehovah, wherein have I done wrongfully? In all my computations I was puffed up with promised surety, but in my farthest research I am tripped up. The power betwixt the sun and the earth could not make this defect. Jehovah heard the voice of TAE and answered him through his son Korpor. Korpor said, Why repinest thou, O TAE? Thou hast taken for granted a power existence betwixt the sun and the earth, because forsooth philosophers have taught it. Did not the philosophers of old say the sun was the creator? TAE then, cast aside the philosophy of this day, prove the attraction of the corporal worlds do not exceed 7 diameters, each of its own, but many of them less than 2. And he measured the satellites and their distances from their central corpor, and he perceived the diameters of the vortices could be determined by the loss or gain in the velocity of the satellites. Where vortices had matured in form, he called them wark, W-A-R-K, as they had been called amongst the ancients, and the wark of the earth was 1,504 miles in diameter. But the vortex of the sun in the places where the earth rideth is 3,000 years, which is to say, 1 year of the earth's wark is equal to 1 year of the sun's vortex, which is as 1 year to 3,000 years in the trail of the serpent. And this again giveth the orbit of the great serpent 4,700,000 years. TAE said, all approximate things impress each other to find the roadway in the earth's travel is to find what hath been and what will be. If therefore the past history of the earthly people for 3,000 years were written truthfully, it would disclose the roadways of one cycle of time, and this must be repeated each 33rd cycle with one deviation in 99 cycles and half a deviation in 8 cycles, which is equivalent to 24,000 years. Don't tap out on me, y'all. Just keep listening. Now, some of y'all started scrolling on your phone because this is math. Pay attention, y'all. Pay attention. Verse 15. And TAE measured the past cycles for 24,000 years, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah were with him, contributing every one a part. This then is the genesis of the cycles, i.e., first Jehovah in his times, and all the created things from without a beginning. And Jehovah was the unseen, which is spirit, and the seen, which is his person and body. Let me give you like a quick little example of the changing of things with the current, using the school system with this current day science and stuff, right? And seeing that something is wrong. Okay, so yesterday I called my husband because he had already left. I called my sister, and then I called my mama. I was like, listen, you know what? I was upstairs and I had already started working. So while I was pulling up my stuff, the TV was on in the background, and I just happened to look at it, and it said education failure, right? And, you know, I don't normally watch CBN, but sometimes the news and stuff be coming on, and it's on that channel. And so it start, you know, playing stuff. But you know how if you ever watch CBN, they'll show like news clippings from CNN based on current day's happenings or whatever. And they'll talk about it, and then they'll pray for everybody, right? Okay, so this was the news clipping from like, I think it was like ABC, local news channels around here, and it had our Governor Youngkin up there, right? And so it said education failure. So it got my attention, you know. So I turned it up a little bit just to listen to what the news clippings had said. And they was talking about how the ratings of the public school systems and how they were declining, right? And specifically talking about Virginia. Right now, I actually talked to a teacher yesterday because I have my children enrolled a couple times a week in Sylvan, right? And those are the ones that's because I ain't this big math guru yet, right? So I was like, we need help, and I know we need help, so I'm gonna get y'all help so y'all don't be like me in math. Y'all can actually understand fractions, because I start sweating under my armpits and on my brow when they get the fractions, and I'm like, just read the directions. I'm like, you know what, Pam, you can't do this. We got to go get help, right? And so I outsource my weaknesses. And math is a weakness of mine. So when I'm reading over some of this, I know some of y'all started scrolling because some of y'all done told me math is not your thing, right? Listen. So I was talking to her, too, after we had after the conference. Matter of fact, before we actually got into the conference, I asked her, had she seen that? And she hadn't, so I was telling her what was going on. And she verified that it is true because I give you that little story. Let me just tell you what was up there. Okay, so they said that the grades as a whole, they were grading the entire state of Virginia on their education in the public schools. And they said that it gave the list of different things like reading comprehension, math skills, and all this, that we were ranking the lowest of all the states. I'm like, I'm gonna have to pull this list up and see exactly where we rank. But they said that we were ranking the lowest in everything. And I'm like, it baffled me because Virginia sometimes is kind of like up. But what they said was, and people saying, oh, it's because of COVID and children missed like a year in the classroom and all this. And they said, no, we've been tracking this. It wasn't just because of COVID. COVID only did little to help it decline a little bit faster. But for years, they had been watching it, trying to figure out what's happening and how to get it. I remember going through all this, what do they call it? They changed the method of the children learning to, what's it called? Get rid of, I didn't even see that. Hold on. Yeah, y'all got to keep timing him out. Hold on, let me see. Hold on. Remove. Yeah, keep hitting it, because after a few times, it'll just put him in, yes, Common Core. It'll put him in YouTube hell jail, right? So if you pop up again, and I'll hit remove again, but you only got to do it a few times, and they'll automatically remove his username and put him in the YouTube hell not jail. So if you pop up again, I'll say, yes, Common Core, right? So once they started trying to, and even a little bit before they tried to start introducing this, they were saying it was just going down here, and they're trying to get ahead of everything and trying to figure out why the students over as a whole, not that there weren't students succeeding individually, but graded as a whole, the state of Virginia was steady declining, right? And I could see it. I mean, not that I was pointing at but I could tell, like, with my children and stuff, and I'm just like, look, and I'm getting pissed with the school system. I'm like, y'all ain't teaching them nothing. I can do a better job at home, right? So, and me also understanding that I have boys and they're more active, and they're at least I know mine, you can't just constantly sit and talk to them. Their learning has to be like interactive, hands-on, because they'll be able to grasp the skills of what you're trying to teach them if they have something to manipulate with their hands. And a lot of times, a lot of boys, I ain't just gonna say boys, but children, you can test it. If you have like an overactive child or whatever, if they can't seem to sit still, pay attention to how you're trying to teach them. A lot of times, they may be those ones that need to be taught like outside. You need to give them more outside time. Give them something to do, right? Because just sitting there talking to them, it's like you're boring them to death. You're not teaching them the right way. Therefore, they always get in trouble. They're labeled class clowns. They can't focus because you're not teaching them how they can understand, right? And I remember mentioning this a couple weeks ago, but I never finished with my story. I was thinking about this the other day. There's a teacher in Chicago, I forget his name. I believe it was in Chicago, when he began to pay attention to this, because they always talking bad about Chicago and murder capital of the world and all this stuff, right? But he took the at-risk students, and he started with black males. Now they do have not just black students there anymore, but that's where he came from, and that's what he was seeing a need at, and he understood, like, wait a minute, and he be out there like playing basketball with him and just trying to talk to him. He was like that, the I don't want to say Mr. Rogers of the neighborhood, but like the father of the neighborhood, like, hey boy, I'm gonna go talk to your parents, get out of there. What y'all doing? Nope, don't do that. He was like the neighborhood father. So he started like this little like after school thing, and then he decided to educate himself because he realized he had a way with children, especially young black men, right? So he figured, the father gifted him with the ability to do this, so he began to better himself, and he got his teaching credentials and all that stuff, and he started a legit school, and people started sending their children here, and he developed this entire program, and these men who were slated to go to jail or be dead, now these men are succeeding. They're going to college. They're off the street. I'm like, this is amazing. So I was listening to his story and how he was looking at everything. He said they're teaching them wrong. He said, especially our children, not to be racist or anything, but he said they learn in different ways, and the environment, you have to take into account the environment that they're put inside as well. So not only was he teaching them at school, he was being proactive in their neighborhoods, trying to get the attention. And a lot of times, some of the parents don't listen. So you have to, talk to the children. Then the children talk to their parents, and they keep talking to the parents over and over. And the parents begin to see the change in their children, and they get curious. What you doing here, Dr. Father? This is good. Thank you. Kind of like, what's the movie? My friends call me Joe, but you can call me Batman. What's the movie? He was kind of like that dude or whatever, right? But wanting to see the well-being, but he wasn't like as strict as Mr. Joe or Batman, but he was like really getting in there, and he had an eye to see what these men needed. And then once he kind of got it going with the men, the young ladies who was having the same issues, he allowed them into the program, and things just became awesome. And the children absolutely love him. I got to get the name of this school. Hold on. I got to get this. Hopefully they still got it up. But anyway, the whole point of saying all that is that once they started, I ain't gonna say once they started introducing Common Core, but it was kind of going down anyway. They trying to reinvent the wheel. Things that worked was developing children over the ages. They figured they'd get a little bit smarter. So this also helped reiterate what the father said to me, because when I pulled him out, I was just like, I'm sick of the crap. I'm gonna just do this myself. Right? And some days I'm like, oh, Father, my kid's going to be dumber than the kids in public school. Help me. I don't even know what I'm doing. I was just all emotional. I pulled them out. I don't know what I'm doing. Right? And so I had those moments from time to time. Should I put them back in public school? And so when this came on, I called my sister. I said, girl, we ain't doing so bad. And it was just joking or whatever. But to see that, and then to have them come on and say it. I'm gonna try to show all of these clips, so y'all can see if y'all want to look at it. And for them to come up and say that when they stopped teaching the basics, hold on, before I tell you that, when the father spoke to me, I was like, Father, what? How am I gonna do this? Right? And the father told me what I heard. I still remember. We was living in our last house. We had like just moved there, maybe like a year. And I remember I was standing by the door, them getting ready to go to school. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull them out. I was like, how am I going to do this? And I heard him specifically say, he said, teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic. Stick with the core things, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I was like, okay, right? So I just kind of been sticking with that. And so to hear them say yesterday, once they got to the end of this little education failure blurb and what was happening with the state of Virginia and its rankings, and the annual testing scores being like the lowest on the charts and all that stuff, they said we started seeing a decline when we stopped teaching them the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it took me all the way back to the many years ago, not that many years ago, but about 4 years ago, when I heard the father say, just stick to the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it strengthened me again, just hearing that. I'm like, wow. Tabitha said, my daughter's a teacher. She said the same thing. The children are not being taught properly. Trinidad has a similar problem. Yeah. Thank you, Brajo. You lean on me. Yeah, so this happening everywhere. It is what it is, which is why most parents who have the ability and the means to, they just pull their children out. Not saying that you should or you bad because you can't. It's just depending on what school system you in. And the school system here is not that bad, right? But back to what the teacher at Sylvan told me yesterday. So she actually, her career has been in education. She's been a teacher from the time she graduated college, and she's like my age now. She's like 45, right? So she's been in the school system, and she's taught in multiple school systems. And her husband, her job requires him to travel. So like every 5 years or so, wherever he's stationed, the whole family will move, and she'll just get into that school system. So she's been here in Virginia, and I think her husband, he's retiring, so they're going to retire here. But she worked here in the Virginia school system for like 4 years before COVID actually happened. So she saw like a steady decline while she was in the system, and she said it was hard for them to get not just resources, but they were seeing that this Common Core curriculum is not working for the students. You're like overcomplicating things. And she said it's only so much that they can do. She said her hands was tied, and she said she was getting fed up with it, and she felt like she wasn't doing the children any kind of justice. If they tried to go outside of teaching this or whatever, they would get reprimanded for it. And, she said she was just getting tired of it. And she felt like she was doing the children a disservice and not being able to help them. She said, and after COVID happened and they went back into the classrooms, she just saw it was way worse. And she said, and about 2 months, I think a little bit over a month back in, she said that's it. She couldn't do it anymore. She handed in her resignation and she left, and she went and found a job, and she's working at Sylvan. She's a district manager now for the Sylvans here. And so it is her passion. She said, not only are the parents come and complain about the same stuff, not just because the children are lacking, but they've noticed a steady decline and gaps with the children and stuff. She said, even the homeschool community we have come here. She said, I didn't realize, she said, until the Murphys got here, because we got 4 of them there. She said, because I never had 4 siblings all at once. She said, I started to looking into the homeschool, and she said, and she looked like, because they have like 3 different locations in Sylvan. She said, we have a really big homeschool community of students who come out of the public schools where they're trying to fill in gaps of different things. She said, and so what they're going to do, they're creating something special, special sessions for the homeschool communities, because they realize these kids, they're not in public schools all day like the rest of everybody else. So the way their hours are structured and set up is after school hours. But now they realize that there's a lot of homeschool students that are there. The parents are trying to help fill in gaps. They're now creating, and they're going to start testing it. They're getting approval. They're going to start testing next week, right? And my kids are going to be a part of it. They get to do day classes, and all the time doing Sylvan here, they get to be in the day classes and not just in the afternoon, because they was also noticing that some of the homeschool students, she was like, okay, so explain to me their day, because we're working on something here. And she's noticing, because they do bulk of their plan and all this stuff, and towards the end hours of the day, they're tired. And sometimes they're not focusing, they're falling asleep. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on with them. So they're setting it up to where when they have the most of their energy, they can do it during the morning hours, so they can, so I was like, this is amazing. I'm glad to be a part of this, and thank you. Yes, that will help so much. I ain't got to fight with them in the evening, so can't we just skip the day? I want to go to sleep, so, but I said all that because of verse 12 and 7 on page 755, where when Tay was going through here doing this calculation, he was realizing that the theories that they were putting out in that day, they were wanting and they were lacking things, right? Because they discounted a lot of basic foundational things from the beginning of the world, so to speak, even before the world, right? All right, so take my hey girl, hey, yes, they are. Listen, no, they really not. I just started to wear them, right? I've had these glasses for the last year sitting in my nightstand. I finished unpacking the rest of my closet over the weekend, this past weekend, and they were in the case that I got them when I got my new exam last October. A whole year I've had them. And I just, because I really like my black ones, I was like, I get to them when I get to them, right? But the black ones, they was done. Everything, they was just done, all bent out of shape. Although y'all probably couldn't see it, I was constantly pushing them up on my face. There was like no more grip whatsoever. I was like, Pam, wear the new glasses. Okay, yeah. Sometimes I take a liking to things, and I like to just, I like what I like, right? But sometimes change is good. Okay, let's get back to this. Look, verse 10. Tay said, okay. Tay said, O Jehovah, wherein have I done wrongfully? In all my computations, I was puffed up with promised surety, but in my farthest research, I am tripped up. The power betwixt the sun and the earth could not make this defect. Jehovah heard the voice of Tay and answered him through his son Korpor. Korpor said, why repinest thou, O Tay? Thou hast taken for granted a power existeth betwixt the sun and the earth, because forsooth philosophers have taught it. Did not the philosophers say of old, the sun was the creator? TAE then cast aside the philosophy of this day, prove the attraction of the corporal worlds do not exceed 7 diameters, each of its own, but many of them less than 2. And he measured the satellites and their distances from their central corpor, and he perceived the diameters of the vortices could be determined by the loss or gain in the velocity of satellites. Where vortices had matured in form, he called them warp, as they had been called amongst the ancients, and the warp of the earth was 1,504 miles in diameter, but the vortex of the sun in the places where the earth rideth is 3,000 years, which is to say, 1 year of the earth's warp is equal to 1 year of the sun's vortex, which is as 1 year to 3,000 years in the trail of the serpent. And this again giveth the orbit of the great serpent 4,700,000 years. TAE said, all approximate things impress each other, and to find the roadway in the earth's travel is to find what hath been and what will be. If therefore the past history of the earthly people for 3,000 years were written truthfully, it would disclose the roadways of one cycle of time, and this must be repeated each 33rd cycle with 1 deviation in 99 cycles and half a deviation in 8 cycles, which is equivalent to 24,000 years. Y'all gonna probably have to read that a few times before that sink in, okay? Just stay with me. And TAE measured the past cycles for 24,000 years, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah were with him, contributing every one a part. This then is the genesis of the cycles, i.e., first Jehovah and his times, and all created things from without a beginning. And Jehovah was the unseen, which is spirit, and the seen, which is his person and body. By Jehovah and mastery over his person, created he countless worlds, of which the corporal earth is one, and he created the living thereon. And the time was 1 Gadol, i.e., 24,000 years. Hak, H-A-K, was second born, and then Simu, and they covered the earth abroad with Asu, till Hotu came, and Jehovah ceased creating new living things, and the second time of the earth was Hotu. Jehovah sent Cephas, word maker, with the sword, and in the 7th cycle of Cephas, the continent of Pan was peopled over with men raised up to words and deeds of blood. And yet in other cycles, the earth prospered only on one continent, and none could be inspired to go abroad and live with Asu. So Jehovah saw wisdom in the ark of Suth, who held dominion for 3,000 years, and he begat Iz, who was in dominion 3,100 years, and he begat Aph, A-P-H, who reigned 3,600 years, who begat Apollo, who reigned 2,800 years, who begat Osiris the first, who reigned 3,300 years, who begat Abraham and Brahma, who reigned 2,400 years, who begat Moses and Capelia, who reigned 3,400 years, who begat Cosmon, of which this is the 33rd year, 1881. The great serpent is in the 64th Hui, H-U-Y, of the orbit of C. Warcum, or in parentheses, the Savorcum. And after Savorcum is referenced to letter B, go to the end of the book of knowledge, and we're going to pause after this one chapter, y'all. B says, on page 764, Travels of the Great Serpent, 8th 3,000 years, plate 53. The Etherian region Hui is the present location of the solar system as it travels along the Savorcum. While the text reads 64th Hui, the plate reads 44th Hui. Okay, so let's go to plate 53. Go to the table of contents where the plates are located. 53, page 492. Oh no, this I'm about to say this is a fold out. Hold on, that does show the Savorcum on the fold out. What page I say? Let me go back. Page 492. Oh, okay. So this is strips. Okay, this is strips of the okay, yeah. So so see the fold out page, which is page 485, right? And it's the very page before Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy. This is where the fold out is located, right? So in Cosmogony and Prophecy, the Savorcum is broken up, right? It has the cuts that we were just talking about, and it has plate 53 on page 492 right here, the bottom this page right here, right? And so plate 53 at the bottom, it says the eighth 3,000 years, or cut 8, C-U-T, cut, cutting through the, so you can see the breaking of the periods, cut 8, plate 53, travel of the great serpent during the 7th and 8th 3,000 years after man's creation, showing also the Orion fields in Ethera with their comparative densities and symbols. All right, so a lot of us, we ain't really gonna understand it all the way clearly yet, like Selah does, and he can do whole presentations. Listen, this. I'm like, what? What did you just say? So I had to go back and watch his videos, especially when he start rattling off them numbers and years and stuff and being able to backtrack. I'm like, yeah, bro, been doing this for a very long time where he can rattle this math off like this. And, I'm already mathematically challenged in a lot of areas, right? I'm not ashamed to say that, right? So I got to read things multiple times and look at the comparative resources to make sure I'm understanding it right. And then I can add in a story if I understand what's going on, right? But until then, it might just be, sis, what you're trying to explain is so dry. Can you give us any elaboration? No, I can't. Not at this point. I cannot. Because I don't know. I'm just reading what's here. All right, hold on. Okay, so B, the travels of the great serpent, 8th 3,000 years, plate 53. The Etherian region Hui is the present location of the solar system as it travels along the Savorcum. While the text reads 64th Hui, the plate reads 44th Hui. Okay, so let's go back. I know Ima, right? She said I'm mathematically challenged too, so I don't feel sick. I'm mathematically challenged too, so don't feel bad. Well, thank you, sis. Thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, so go back to page 756. Okay, verse 21. It came to pass that when the earth had entered into the 33rd year of the ark of Cosmon in the Etherian firmament, Jehovah spake out of the midst of heaven, and there were quickened up those whom his holy angels had prepared to hear the Father's voice. Jehovah said, all who hear my voice shall know me and comprehend my person. And as many as hear me and behold my presence shall be called TAE, for they are the first fruit of the resurrection in Cosmon. Of such were the faiths in the ark of Bon and in the cycles prior to that period. And TAE shall come forth in me, for he is my word, speaking in his labor to that end, not by books, nor by words of the mouth. And I will quicken TAE, and he shall be as a new race on the earth, practicing holiness by good works and by associative labor, dwelling in peace and love with one another, abnegating self in all things. For of such are my kingdoms, and TAE shall lay the foundation thereof upon the earth. And we are considered TAE, those who can hear the Father's voice and who are operating. Let me read this. This is good. Hold on. There is TAE in every generation, or those who can hear the Father's voice. Listen. I'm gonna go back up verse 21, page 756. Tabitha said, my daughter passed math and I had nothing to do with it. Listen. Verse 21, page 756. And we almost done, y'all. It's 40 verses here in this chapter. And we're going to pause at the end of this chapter 1, verse 21. It came to pass that when the earth had entered into the 33rd year of the ark of Cosmon in the Etherian firmament, Jehovah spake out of the midst of heaven, and there were quickened up those whom his holy angels had prepared to hear the Father's voice. Jehovah said, all who hear my voice shall know me and comprehend my person. And as many as hear me and behold my presence shall be called TAE, T-A-E, for they are the first fruit of the resurrection in Cosmon. Of such were the Faiths in the ark of Bond and in the cycles prior to that period. And TAE shall come forth in me, for he is my word, speaking in his labor to that end, and not by books, nor by words of the mouth. And I will quicken TAE, and he shall be as a new wraith on the earth, practicing holiness by good works and by associative labor, dwelling in peace and love with one another, abnegating self in all things, for of such are my kingdoms, and TAE shall lay the foundation thereof upon the earth. Hey, boo. No, I have not seen Isaiah this morning, but you can end it. Go get a washcloth and wash your face. And then you come back, because I'm going to be ended in a few minutes, so go ahead and do that. By the time you get back, I'll probably be ended. Verse 24, I'm going to read again. And I will quicken TAE, and he shall be as a new race on the earth, practicing holiness by good works and by associative labor, dwelling in peace and love with one another, abnegating self in all things. For such are my kingdoms, and TAE shall lay the foundation thereof upon the earth. To the organic associations who labor in me, I send representative angels from my Etherian worlds, but to him who liveth for self and by isolation and inorganically with neighbors, I permit the angels of atmosphere to minister. Let me read the whole verse again. 25. To the organic associations who labor in me, I send representative angels from my Etherian worlds, but to him who liveth for self and by isolation and inorganically with neighbors, I permit the angels of atmosphere to minister. Oh, shoot. I heard what it said. I'm going to read it one more time, and I ain't even finished the verse. That's what I thought. Listen. If you ain't trying to walk closely to the Father, he going to let the angels of the first resurrection, right? The ones that got the latter happenings and going zones and hotter. He said he'll allow them to minister to you. Pay attention. I didn't say it. I'm just repeating this. Listen. Verse 25. To the organic associations who labor in me, I send representative angels from my Etherian worlds. But to him who liveth for self and by isolation and inorganically with neighbors, I permit the angels of atmosphere to minister. Neither shall my host of the second heaven come to those who are wrapped up in the earth, for they are as a reservoir for the spirits of darkness. And it came to pass that TAE was as one man, being attuned to the Father, and the light of the past and present came upon him. And the second heaven was let down to the earth, and the host of Ethera ministered to TAE and quickened him, that he might understand what it was to hear the voice of Jehovah, neither depend on the sacred books of the ancients, nor on the angels of heaven. For Jehovah has said, in that day shall each and every one be as a covenant with me, speaking and conversing with me. They shall be as seers and prophets themselves, making their own sacred books, rites and ceremonies, and these shall stand above all else that have ever been. When TAE pursued Suis, which is the reading of the unseen impressions, he was also developed in Eth, which is the overtaking of the vibrations of things long past, meaning you get to read history from the libraries of heaven. Listen. It's talking about all of us, right? All of us. We are TAE. Verse 27. For Jehovah has said, in that day shall each and every one be as a covenant with me, speaking and conversing with me. They shall be as seers and prophets themselves, making their own sacred books, rites and ceremonies, and these shall stand above all else that have ever been. When TAE pursued Suis, which is the reading of unseen impressions, he was also developed in Eth, which Eth, E-T-H-E. When TAE pursued Suis, which is the reading of unseen impressions, he was also developed in Eth, which is the overtaking of the vibrations of things long past. For as one may cast a stone in a lake, and it waveth the water and the air above it, so also do things vibrate to the uttermost places. He who hath developed in Eth becometh as an unraveler of tangled threads, and things that are past are as an open book. Right? So when people, listen, here's why I understand. Listen, remember how I told y'all? I was like, remember I was going through I ain't gonna call it a little phase, but in my little journey to get where I am today, how I was being drawn to the magic books and stuff just to see what's in it, tested. All the information is being hidden. I need to look at it, test, and I came across the vibration things, and then the auras and the chakra system, and putting all this together, the energy that's vibrating. I was like, vibration, everything is vibration, right? Even what we see is vibration in a different form. Everything is vibration around us. Being able to feel colors is vibration, right? It's vibration in a different matter, right? Just on a different scale here, right? But the more you tune yourself and understand that you are yourself a vortexian current, you are vibration, right? All of these things become a little bit clearer, and you can get in tune, and you can pick up the frequencies of different radio stations, so to speak, right? If you're in tune and you know how to tune, right? We wouldn't need all these devices. Listen, all these devices, even this, what we got, this phone and this iPad, all these cameras, we got this. This is like training wheels to the spiritual realm. And they just throw all this stuff out here. It's not bad. We can use it for its strengths, right? But if we learn how to tune our own frequencies in our own body, we wouldn't need none of this. ESP, what do we call it? ESP would be just like breathing. We don't need none of this. Right, I could sit and I'm working on it. I'm sure, as we all are, we be able to literally to communicate spirit to spirit. If I'm here in Virginia and you off in Hawaii, California, down to Greece, in Jamaica, Trinidad, right? I know how to tune in to Tabitha. Hey sis, what's going on today down here in Virginia? I'm coming to see you in Trinidad, right? And Tabitha will pick it up. Okay, sis, come on. What day you coming? Right? That's how it should be, right? Listen. All these training wheels and electronic, this stuff, this cars, all of this is because we don't know how to use our own vehicles, right? And they always throwing the newest gadgets up in front of our face. Ooh, I need that. I'm like, bro, and we go to the grave still not understanding what the Father has truly created us to be. We haven't developed it any, right? I'm just saying. Listen. Verse 28. When TAE pursued Suis, which is the reading of unseen impressions, he was also developed in Eth, which is the overtaking of the vibrations of things long past. For as one may cast a stone in a lake, and it waveth the water and the air above it, so also do all things vibrate to the uttermost places. He who hath developed in Eth becometh as an unraveler of tangled threads, and things that are past are as an open book. To him the books of the libraries of heaven are open, for he not only seeth and heareth the spirits of the dead, but he goeth forth out of the corporal body, for such have no longer sin and self in them, and he beholdeth the glories of heaven, and returneth again to his corporal body unharmed. It's talking about astral projecting on purpose, having out-of-body experiences, traveling on purpose. I'm going to leave my body here and I'm going to go there, right? This is why we got into a member before we even started My Big Toe. And I was like, listen, y'all, this is not new age. This is real. The Father created our bodies this way. And I brought out scientific evidence that even our government, not just our government, governments all over the world know and they're using. Studies have been done on it. We read through the CIA document that tells you that the government is using out-of-body experiences or astral projecting, and they steal other government secrets. That's how they tap into some of the stuff. Little woman living in the ghetto, they steal her idea about the man. How did they get that? Nobody went to where she was living at, but she took that case to court and won that. How did they get The Matrix and make billion-dollar movies and sequels to this? And this idea was a woman, and she proved, whoever would have thought a little black lady would win the case, The Matrix is my idea. He said, who gonna believe you, right? But she won it, right? Things like this. Y'all, I really want this channel to develop to where we can put these things into practice. Me giving y'all homework, even giving y'all the stuff with Robert Monroe, right? And the university, they literally, it's a science down to this where they're teaching people how to go in and out of body at will. It's not wicked. It's not evil. We were designed to do this. We should be developing in this, but the schools are not teaching this like they should. They used to in some schools, and they hide it. They burn stuff. I mean, I get it, right? It's the ebb and flows and cycles of life. I get it. But we should know how to do this. But the church and the other religions got us all spooked out and said the devil stay away from it. Oh my gosh, they got into a cult. Energy, they're talking about energy, current. Oh my gosh, it's a new age, red flag. I'm like, I'm going to just keep on going. I ain't going to say nothing because you preschool level and we getting up into middle school, right? And it's the same thing. Don't touch the stove. No, you can't touch the stove because you ain't old enough. But we can cook, right? And we cooking up big meals in the kitchen, right? Keep living, keep learning. You'll be able to cook big meals too. We at the point, we're ready to start cooking big meals, right? And that's what this is. This is cooking big meals, right? Look. They demonize everything. Listen. All right, let me finish this, y'all. I'm still in this one chapter. This is so good, though. Okay. Let me read 28 again. Page 756. When TAE pursued Suis, which is the reading of unseen impressions, he was also developed in Eth, which is the overtaking of the vibrations of things long past. For as one may cast a stone in a lake, and it waveth the water, and the air above it, so also do all things vibrate at the uttermost places. He who hath developed an Eth becomes as an unraveler of tangled threads, and things that are past are as an open book. To him, the books of the libraries of heaven are open, for he not only seeth and heareth the spirits of the dead, but he goeth forth out of the corporal body, for such have no longer sin and self in them, and he beholdeth the glories of heaven, and returneth again to his corporal body unharmed. You can put right there, astral projection, OBE, out-of-body experiences. But you get to the libraries of heaven as you cleanse yourself out, because it is some people on the lower levels that have also attained to this, right? And they know how to do this, but they haven't walked through the process. Those are the ones taking shortcuts there, where they haven't walked through the process of literally cleansing their spirits and their bodies, where they're operating unselfishly, looking out for other people. How do I know that? Because I've encountered some of them who can do this, right? And they go out of body at will, literally. Listen, I told y'all about this before. Some people go out of body to go have spirit sex. It's a thing. They go looking for ghost booty. And it happens, and does happen, and is happening, right? People can astral project themselves to you. A lot of times they may teach you incubus and succubus. No, that's John, and he lived 2 apartments down. He been watching you, and he know how to get into your paints with you unawares, and you thinking it's a dream. He looking at you and smiling every day. Hey, Sis, I didn't know you. Look, no, let me stop. But seriously, this is happening, y'all. This is happening. I'm telling y'all, this is happening. And you should be aware of it so you can recognize it. But as you get these gifts, not gifts because everybody can do it. You just have to develop what's already in you. As you develop, use it wisely, because people who are doing that, I call that falls in the category of abuse of power to me, right? You're using it wrong. This was not what this was created for, right? They're abusing their power. They're abusing their authority. They're abusing their knowledge with people who are less knowledgeable, right? And that is a no-no. They're going to find themselves in a world of trouble. Listen, this is verse 28 is so good. Let me read it one more time. And we're going to keep going. I promise y'all we're going to finish. When TAE pursued suis, which is the reading of unseen impressions, he was also developed in eth, which is the overtaking of the vibrations of things long past. For as one may cast a stone in a lake, and it waveth the water and the air above it, so also do all things vibrate to the uttermost places. He who hath developed in eth becometh as an unraveler of tangled threads, and things that are past are as an open book. To him